Today we are going to be talking about Oxnard Boulevard. As you know, the state of California relinquished Oxnard Boulevard to the City of Oxnard in March of last year, 2013. So it's no longer a Caltrans facility, it belongs to the city. The City of Oxnard would like to know what the residents envision for the boulevard, and that is the purpose for these meetings. In today's audience, I'd like to announce a couple of planning commissioners that are here with us. Mr. Sonny Okada and Mr. Steve Nash. And with that said, I give it to Omni.
Thank you, Jason. Good morning. I'm Jim. Thank you all for coming out. Appreciate it. It's really a valuable opportunity for the Oxnard community to come together and to shape the future of what has been the main thoroughfare throughout the community. To shape it in terms of whether its physical appearance, potentially the amenities that are on it now or could be in the future, and also as a tool certainly of economic development. The catalyst for the project is a decision that Caltrans made across the state of California, a tool certainly of economic development. The catalyst for the project is a decision that Caltrans made across the state of California to turn over some key state highways, I think there's about 70 or 72 in total, to various communities. And in doing so, as Jason mentioned, the ownership of State Highway 1 has recently gone from Caltrans to the local community. And now this presents this valuable opportunity to create a vision for the corridor. Caltrans has de-obligated itself from maintenance of those highways, but also then an opportunity for the respective recipient communities to control how those corridors or highways will look in the future. So as Jason mentioned, the ownership of State Highway 1 is recently, and to walk through each of the segments, Joe, I think you'll walk through each one of them.
I'll cut across the screen, please. Thank you. My name is Joe Blvd, and I'm actually one of the principals with Don Means for crime consultant for this important study. And Jim and his group of Morgan Associates are public outreach specialists and transit specialists. And Gary at the keyboard is actually our project manager. But because I like to talk,
Caltrans to the local community, and now this presents this valuable opportunity to create a vision for the corridor. Oxnard Boulevard is certainly very diverse in its
one is at the one all the way down to 6, which takes you to essentially Pleasant Valley Road, or the end of the study area, as being, or was Highway 1 with the city. There were 2 other pieces of state highway that were relinquished to the city at the same time that are part of the study area. And then it will make sense why we're not just looking at Oxnard Boulevard. But we are also looking at Vineyard Avenue from Oxnard to 101. Highway 230 was Highway 232. Now it's also part of the city's responsibility, and they have the opportunity to look at Vineyard. And then 5th Street from Oxnard Boulevard to Rice Ave. Highway 34 used to be Highway 34 at the state. It's now also part of the city, and so that is also part of the study area. This graph, it's probably you can't see it very well because of the sunlight and lighting on it. It really shows you the 6 segments from 101 to Pleasant Valley, south end segment 6, and then 7 and 8. Let's go to the Vineyard. And then 5th Street from Oxnard Boulevard to Rice Ave. Highway 34 used to be Highway 34 at the state. It's now also part of the city, and so that is also part of the study area. Is Rice, well, not,
Let me address that. It is Caltrans' long-term goal to designate Rice Avenue as State Route 1. They haven't done it yet because there are some conditions that they want the city to reconstruct the roadway. We don't have the funds to do that yet. Once we do that, Rice Avenue will be designated State Route 1, and that will be the only state facility through the city of Oxnard.
And then obviously with this graph, probably you can't see it very well because of the sunlight and lighting on it. It really shows you the 6 segments from 101 to Pleasant Valley, south end segment 6, and then 7 and 8. Let's go to the individual segments. Before we even started on this study,
So the only Caltrans obligation within city limits is Rice Avenue?
is Rice, well, not, I'll have to,
Let me address that real quick. It is Caltrans' long-term goal to designate Rice Avenue as State Route 1. They haven't done it yet.
segment 1, at the north end, obviously, you have the Esplanade Shopping Center, the Wagonville development, some new condos. As you move south, it's kind of bifurcated by the overhead. Well, actually, Oxnard's an underpass, but the railroad crossing kind of bifurcates segment 1, and as you go further south, you get into more residential and commercial, primarily on the west side, with the railroad kind of as a barricade to access. Segment 2 is, going to put that up. And then segment 2 is just somewhat similar. If you do have a fully developed 6-lane section on Oxnard, it's one of the differences. And then it's still commercial on the west side, residential on the west and east. But again, which will be kind of a theme until you get down in the city area, is the railroad on the east side, which acts as a barrier to access to the east side of the businesses.
Segment 3 conditions that they want the city to reconstruct the roadway. We don't have the funds to do that yet. Once we do that, Rice Avenue will be designated State Route 1, and that will be the only state facility through the city of Oxnard.
And then obviously, when Rice becomes Highway 1, and connect to 34 across the railroad between the segment. So that will be one focus, looking at accessibility within the segment. On the west side, you do have commercial, you have frontage roads, nice wide section of highway, Oak Highway again, that has lots of opportunities, and then you get down into the residential sections. Segment 4 and 8, they're kind of together because of 5th Street is right in the middle of segment 4. You do have the 3rd Street overhead. You do have one crossing over there at that point. And just to the south of there, the railroad starts curving to the east, and so it becomes less of a corridor. But as you get into segment 4, again, you have the Caltrans Business Center, the Transit Center. You start to get into the industrial zones, which you move south on Oxnard Boulevard. Opportunities, there are opportunities, but some constraints still. Not only the railroad, but some trucking forward into the industrial areas, so you take a look at that and what can be done downtown. 5th Street's important because it is an east-west kind of industrial truck route. It's currently being used with all the industrial uses on the north side of 5th Street. And 5th Street will have its own issues as we move forward. Take a look at walkability, bicycles, pedestrian accessibility issues. And segment 4 actually is down to 5 meters. The Rice interchange junction. Segments 1, 2, and 7. Segment 1 and 2 is Oxnard Blvd. 1 is from the 101 to Vineyard, and then segment 2 extends from Vineyard down to Gonzales. Before we even started, the city and the city staff and our boulevard, the state's wisdom, lots of concrete from curb to curb. So in segment 5, looks like there are opportunities to maybe start squeezing that section down and make it more aesthetically pleasing, accessible for walking. Anyway, segment 5, segment 6 is really from the railroad crossing all the way down to Pleasant Valley Road. Again, distinct opportunities. You have a lot of open space, nice wide roadways from Rose Avenue to Pleasant Valley. It's what I would call a freeway segment with Caltrans on the interchange for Channel Island. So there are opportunities in that segment too. So we will look at this entire project is Oxnard Boulevard and also the Vineyard and the piece of history. is really, this is the first workshop. We're really doing our data research, looking at pulling our existing conditions information together. Meeting with you folks, we have another workshop at 12:30, and 2 more workshops on Wednesday so that we can get your feedback as we're kind of defining the existing conditions and working with the city. Pull that together. But the project objectives are looking at strategies, bus stops, benches, what can be provided in the corridor. Walking and biking is very important, so we'll look at opportunities for sidewalks, multi-use trails, lighting, which is very important when you're developing a walkability type improvements, and enhanced accessibility. How do pedestrians and bicycles access either side of the corridor? Traffic still is important as the corridors of drivability. Also, people the enhancement we'll look at both in operations and wayfinding signage. How do not only when people get on your roadway, but the signage, how do you direct them to where you want them to go? Whether it's the transit center, the downtown, parks, schools, the corridors of drivability. Also, people the enhancement we'll look at both in operations and wayfinding signage. How do not only when people get on your roadway, but the signage, how do you direct them to where you want them to go? Anticipate benefits as we move through this process and come up with the kind of the initial recommendations, which will happen probably in the early spring, late winter, early spring, through the final study that we improve traffic flow, improve safety, not on the roadway and railroads, look at improving bicycle and pedestrian accessibility and facilities, and to come up with a more visually attractive corridor, something that is enhances the city. As a vehicle or somebody comes into your city, that's a more attractive corridor and more enhanced. And also, obviously, better access to key locations within the city. These are just some examples. One of the things that Occtip means is a reputation for not only transportation planning and design, but we're very heavily into roundabouts designs throughout the state. The whole corridor doesn't need to be a roundabout corridor, but there may be some key locations where it may be an appropriate application that actually could provide all of those mobility issues that we talked about, improve bicycle, pedestrian, transit operations. To streetscape, I know talking with the city, as a photo on the upper right is some streetscape that's in the city currently with the drought that's ongoing in the state of California. The city is moving towards looking at developing different standards for how to treat landscape areas for any drought-resistant vegetation, things like that. So we'll see that start to change. Bicycle facilities, whether they're on-street or part of a mixed-use multi-use path. And then obviously looking at enhancing ADA accessibility.
So we now come to the opportunity for you to participate, or to look at the various display items around the room, to ask questions, to give your ideas, your initial ideas. As Joe indicated, this is the first of a series of workshops, the first of 3 in a series of workshops. We'll come back again in the spring and put together, present some of the possible ideas or solutions based on feedback that we've received from the community, as well as Omni's experience conducting successfully similar projects throughout California. And then the last one will bring those recommendations into closer focus, which will be in the late spring. So you may want to start with the segment closest to your home or perhaps where you work. Identify those improvements which are most important to you. Are they road-based or perhaps pedestrian or bicycling-based or public transit? Certainly have good service here for Gold Coast Transit throughout the city, and provide input in as many stations as you like. And if anyone wishes to ask a question at this point, we'll open up to the floor.
I wanted something like this for a long, long time. The corridor from the our beautiful coast to our busy highway up here, has always been through Oxnard, and as much as I love Oxnard, it's blank. We all know. Okay, just a question, what could we do about maybe a sound wall from the tracks? Now, I know it relates to graffiti and all that, but, you know, think it positive. Is that part of the, a thought, or is that just, has that been discussed or anything brought up, or?
Your comment is the type of comment we would look for. I mean, if that's something that you would like considered as part of this project, certainly write it down, make your suggestions, and, you know, as we start looking at opportunities and potential improvements, at least it could be considered, and if there's a reason why it can't be provided, it can be documented, and you'd be able to read it and understand it.
Are we willing to look at the corridor within the right of way, or can we also look at the potential adjacent land uses?
What we wanted to look at primarily is the street roadway and how it was developed. Land use definitely is something we can take into consideration, but what we're looking at is, for instance, Caltrans didn't support bicycle lanes in the past, or they wouldn't allow us to put trees in the median. There are no sidewalks on one side of Oxnard Boulevard. We want to hear from the community what they envision Oxnard Boulevard as being. Do you see it as being a major thoroughfare with 3 lanes each direction? Do you see it as being only 1 or 2 lanes each direction with on-street parking, bicycle lanes? Land uses, we can definitely take that into consideration, but it wasn't initially part of this. That's not to say that it can't be part of the study, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, because it's hard to isolate transportation from land use, and each segment has different character.
Yes.
So I want to make sure that whatever we think that we want to propose or suggest, that has, I guess, has something meaningful to the corridor.
I think in the overall master plan of things, we would definitely want to consider, do we want industrial, commercial, or residential adjacent to Oxnard Boulevard? Those are issues that can be taken on by the city. So if you want to make those comments, definitely please do.
Well, really, here's an opportunity. I can tell you from working on similar projects, this is truly a blank slate. When the city hired Omni and Moore and Associates, it didn't say, you can consider anything except for these 6 things. It really said, go out into the community, listen to what folks have to say, help them inject some reality in terms of what has happened in other communities in similar settings, other former Caltrans corridors, and then talk about the relative benefits or impacts of the proposed improvements or recommendations. This is not the only bite at the apple. As Joe indicated, this is the first in a series of 3 workshops. Whether this same group comes back together or not remains to be seen. The other workshops will be conducted in other venues throughout the community to foster the greatest participation possible. And there's also a web page, a moderated web page that you should have the URL on a lot of the materials. I can tell you that there's already been active discussion on that web page. I think there's been over 85 visits to it just in the past week. People are posting questions, they're posting comments, they're sharing what they feel is important, and I certainly encourage you to visit that web page and to share your ideas and your comments in between the individual workshop sessions so that the conversation continues. That's really what I hope that you'll see this as a conversation, and not as the city hired a consultant who then left town, put together a plan, and then came back and told you, hey, here's your plan, here's Oxnard plan. Sir, you wanted to ask a question?
Okay. With regards to reconfiguration of the boulevard, are we able to view it entirely as a blank slate, so that between, from building to building, basically, the width of the sidewalk, the presence of the median, the presence of bicycle lanes, all of that is kind of malleable?
Well, this study and the report that will result from it is intended to be in harmony with other things that the city has done. It's the general plan. I am not the engineer, I'm the public involvement person. And I can tell you that really we're starting at a blank slate. I mean, obviously there are some fixed elements. You can't change where the roadway travels. You can't change the placement of railroad tracks. But certainly you can talk about the character of the boulevard as a whole, as well as the individual segments that have been identified. Sir?
Hi, my name is Mario Navarro, and I've been in Oxnard just about all my life. One of the main things that you failed to mention here is how successful we are in the truck traffic. The biggest problem on the boulevard is rerouting the truck traffic on the freeway to Del Norte and having a staging area. You get these 80,000-pound vehicles off the boulevard and off of 5th Street, and you give them a staging area and group them in, because we have millions and millions, billions of dollars that have been invested on the industry, and we're so versed. And the main thing is, if you take these animals off the boulevard and you give them a place to stage and wait for the product to be loaded for them in another truck, similar to a truck stop, the millions of dollars that will create on the road tax to fix our roads, and these trucks are tearing up the main roads. These roads were never meant to carry 80,000 pounds. And now they're beginning to go on 5th Street, they're beginning to go on 6th Street, they're all over the city because they're lost. They don't know where to go. So that's one of the main things that is not addressed here, is the heavy truck traffic that we have in the city. And Jason and I, I've been bugging him about it.
I appreciate your comment. The good news is that the Ventura County Transportation Commission is working very closely with the port on talking about access issues, truck issues, air quality issues. And the good news is, while truck traffic or the mitigation of truck traffic is not a specific aspect of this study here, it is being conducted at a time when this other project is also moving forward. So I expect that over time, there's a potential for some harmony or some cross-pollination between the two studies. And that is, how do you take advantage or continue to take advantage of the economic benefits which the port provides, but also not do it in a way that necessarily detracts significantly from the host community's quality of life.
I wasn't referring myself to the port, because they already paid for Winnemere Road to the interchange and down Pleasant Valley Road on both access points. I was referring to the industrial park that we have here, for all the packing sheds, house automation, all the industrial park, the old industrial park, which is actually the economic engine to the city of Oxnard. And there's 5 brand new packing sheds we just built. They're just built. Duda, Don the Army is one of the biggest contributors. Hiji Brothers, Nakamura, all of these guys they're all involved in it. And what we need to do is find a place for these vehicles to park while they're waiting for the crop to come off the field. So the port is not the problem. The problem is the central business district that is between Woolley Road and Rose Road and 5th Street. That is the main focus of what I'm speaking about.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay, are there, sir, right here? Oh, yes.
Just to tail end off of your, I think what they did was they have call-in systems where they keep the truck on the field until they're ready to take them in, so they're not sitting on the streets.
With all due respect,
Yeah.
Commissioner, I was referring to the guest vehicles that come into town and wait to get loaded.
Oh, yeah, okay. Something like purveyors.
Yeah. And we need to provide places for them. And not only that,
Right.
all of these people that come into town, they have disposable cash they can spend in our city. If we could provide them a place to stage, and then a transportation system to get them to the downtown or wherever it may be, they will be an economic upbringing for our city, because they're sitting there waiting. I know the Hiji Brothers provides their own parking, Duda Farms, Dandy, because I just negotiated that deal, and Western Pre-Cooling. But now we need a way of, like a small shuttle service to get these guys to a place where they can get a cup of coffee, a donut, anything. Because they're just sitting there, they're stuck.
That's a great idea.
All right, but
Because
this
it's
is kind
a
of,
wanted need for that.
Huge.
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 let's kind of open it up, sir.
Okay, also, hopefully we can learn from our past mistakes.
when we look at landscaping of center medians and basically on our sidewalks, we keep planting stuff that's lifting our sidewalks, our curbs, our even road beds, as well as planting center medians that are getting to the point where it's creating blind spots at intersections that's causing accidents. Hopefully we can learn from those mistakes in any new development along Oxnard Boulevard and 5th Street and not do it again. I've lived here for 15 years and I keep seeing the same stuff planted over and over again that I know where it's going to go in 5, 10, 15, 30 years because I see the same stuff that was planted 30 years ago. And now the city cannot maintain it because they don't have the equipment.
Karen Block. So I have two questions. First, is Caltrans providing any funding for these improvements, or is that all going to fall upon the city? My second question is, are all the workshops basically repeats?
I'll answer that first question. When Caltrans relinquished Oxnard Boulevard to the city did a study prior to the relinquishment. We identified about $15 million worth of improvements that were needed. They included drainage, roadway repairs, et cetera, et cetera. The city wanted the roadway so badly that they negotiated and they accepted a deal from Caltrans. We got $1 million from the state to make all repairs, necessary repairs, and that's it. And that pretty much was the extent of Caltrans' operation. So, to answer that question, we did get money. It wasn't very much.
Commissioner?
You're talking about bike paths and hiking paths and walking paths, and I'm thinking to myself, the last time I drove down Oxnard Boulevard, people were driving between 40 and 50 miles an hour. I wonder how wide that is.
Well, that's one of the design elements that will.
Unless you're going to stick them on the other side of the sidewalk somehow.
You know, there are traffic calming devices or designs that we can employ on Oxnard Boulevard, but we want to know.
And if you take the speed limit down to 25, you're killing the purpose of the whole thing. The idea is to move traffic through town safely.
Right, that's one of the purposes. There's, again, you know, the purpose of the study is not just moving traffic, but it's to look at making it multimodal. You know, it's how do you move traffic, how do you move pedestrians and bicyclists in transit, it's got to be more harmonious. You can't just serve one purpose, and all these modes of transportation and getting it out need to be carefully considered. And to, you know, as we get deeper into this project, you know, one opportunity, or the greatest opportunity that the city has, and you folks have now, because it's not owned and maintained by the state, is there are opportunities to look at maybe are there traffic calming features, are there things to, you know, slow traffic down, maybe in key segments. You know, when you're at the higher speed locations, as you move north on Oxnard Boulevard, it's segment 3, segment 2, and then as you move down to segment 6, which, you know, goes from the railroad crossing down to Half Roads Avenue. You know, those are, you know, much broader, wider roads. They're different characteristics. They have wider medians, and so we'll take a look at everything as we move forward. Any question?
Pedestrian facilities and parking. And one thing that I would, or two things that I would really wish for, this is mainly for segments 1 and 2 and to some degree 7, is vastly improved streetscape for pedestrians. And I don't mean just a 6-foot sidewalk slapped on the side of a 50-mile-an-hour car lane, but some way that if you're going to use that space as a pedestrian, you feel safe, you feel wanted there. And the other thing is parking. And I think on-street parking would serve the purpose of alleviating some of the parking problems in the neighborhoods right off of Oxnard Boulevard, especially in segment 1. But it also creates a barrier between the carriageway and the pedestrian space. And that barrier is very important to somebody walking along the street. So it's not so much a question, I just wanted to throw that out there since we're talking about it.
Again, these are all good questions, good comments. I believe we are capturing these, so they will be taken into consideration as we move forward.
before he kind of like shuts us up, it's our opportunity. I'm Virginia Espinosa, local banker over 30 years. This is our opportunity to let them know what we want. And I believe in Oxnard, love Oxnard. Yes, Ed's been complaining about the blight of Oxnard Boulevard for years. So I'm excited. I'm excited about this. And let's make sure that we give this gentleman our opinions and let him know what we want. Because it's just like changing the name to from Oxnard. 25,000 and we're still Oxnard. So let's make sure we are Oxnard and we love Oxnard. And I'm sure all of us here are going to accept the name Oxnard. But we want it to be ours, our community. And we will let you know what we would like. Right?
Right. And, you know, I think this is probably the appropriate time to have Mr. French read a statement. Because this is a more useful dialogue that we can have together rather than breaking up into groups where we might not be able to, find a common message and dialogue. And, you know, I would urge everybody here to really rethink the entire Oxnard Saviors Road corridor, because right now we've kind of, we've abandoned that entire strip to the car. And as much as I love my car, cars come with a cost. And, rather than always being focused on trying to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible, we need to think about how we can reclaim this corridor for the residents of Oxnard, because it's, that is the spine and that is the backbone of our entire community. And rather than just driving and passing by all of the wonderful aspects that this community offers, because I mean, we have, Oxnard Boulevard encompasses all economic demographics of Oxnard, and there's wonderful stores, wonderful shops that are literally, withering on the vines. We need to find some way to bring them back into
We need to revitalize our
sustainability.
downtown.
We need to revitalize the downtown and everything else.
My name is Roy Prince, and I'm a local resident and an architect. So I think it's important to define what happens along the street as well as in the street, so that when we look at the street specifically through this, we have a kind of a larger perspective. And I'd like to say that while the ideas and concept presented are my own about the street specifically, all the ideas and concepts are in the public domain and have been used elsewhere. And I did get feedback and refinement from stakeholders in the community, and I really appreciate the community stepping up and helping. So this is a document that has the ideas and concepts of many people in the community. And so this is a response to the proposal for the Oxnard Corridor Community Transportation Improvement Plan. And the main concept, and I'll skip some of what I've written. It's available for people to look at if they want, and I'd like it to be entered into the official record. I've signed, it's a letter, I've signed it. So the main concept, Oxnard Boulevard as an urban residential corridor and complete street from 101 to Pleasant Valley Road. And I propose that Oxnard Boulevard corridor be rezoned for retail at the street level with diverse residential above. 4, 5, and perhaps 6-story residential buildings with higher-end homes at the top level and all nature dwellings below. Singles, 1, 2, 3, and even 4-bedroom units with appropriately sized outdoor spaces and gardens, providing housing options for multi-generational needs, seniors, small families, and empty nesters and more. All mixed to make a rich diversity for housing along the boulevard. To the extent possible, we should aim at flooding the market with housing in order to make it affordable for all, not just to build affordable housing. In addition, the new boulevard will be a tree-lined, pedestrian, and bicycle-friendly model walkable community, the entire length of the new urban corridor. In other words, Oxnard Boulevard will become a complete street. As a society, we are moving towards more public transportation and smaller, much smaller vehicles and away from wide, auto-dominated speedways that destroy a livable, walkable urban landscape. The new boulevard will have the look and feel of more urban space with pocket parks and other civic amenities like public art and more along its entire spine. This is not a rigid idea. It's an idea with lots of flexibility built in, many variations and permutations within the basic theme of housing and retail, concentrated along a walkable urban corridor. Each block along the current corridor is different, suggesting and evoking variations on the general theme of an urban residential complete street. Now the next paragraph is, I'm not going to read it, but it's just the idea that Oxnard Boulevard is really a connector between the LA area, Santa Monica, Malibu, and Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, and points north. So we know we have 101 as one corridor. We all know that we use that beach route at times. And Oxnard has a historic district that may not want a downtown with all the hustle and bustle to encroach into the area. With this plan, Oxnard downtown remains A, B, and C streets, and there are a number of historic businesses and buildings along the corridor. These entities must be respected and integrated into the fabric of the plan. I'm going to skip a paragraph and I'm going to address parking. All too often, parking is the form generator for cities. Clearly, this is not a good way to plan for the future. The residential structures I'm proposing for Oxnard Boulevard, urban residential complete streets corridor, may have parking at the street level behind retail and perhaps on a second floor with residential above. This second floor parking will be designed so it can easily be converted into residential office as we advance further into a world where we use public transportation and bicycles more and cars less. Also, with appropriate public transportation, perhaps we plan for one parking space in the residential structure and another in an easily accessible parking structure nearby, or credit of some kind given for only one parking space. So my concluding paragraph is that currently Oxnard Boulevard has a shabby look with empty lots and remnants of auto dealerships, strip malls, and other worn-out buildings lining a rundown road. The above proposal has the potential to make Oxnard Boulevard and the City of Oxnard a leader in transportation planning and housing innovation in Ventura County. And thank you all very much for listening and taking time.
Thank you for sharing your obviously very well thought out recommendations and observations about not only the corridor, but also the overall character of your city. And that we'll make sure that gets entered into the study discussion, public discussion summaries. Yes, Commissioner, you got another question?
Oh, my name is Sonny Okada. I'm a chiropractor. I did architecture for about 25 years before I became a chiropractor. But as a planning commissioner, I've always thought, what would Oxnard look like in 30 years from now? And I thought about it, and I've thought about this way out of the box thought was to consider to eminent domain all C2 zoning, which is Oxnard Boulevard, 35 foot and over, which our building codes only allow us to build 35 feet and over, under. And so we put a concrete platform over it, and exactly like Mr. Prince says, what Mr. Prince was recommending was mixed use. Mixed use means just like in Italy or like Macalone, he's an architect too. Like in New York or Bronx, you have commercial zoning on the bottom, and then you have residential above, And the very top penthouse is high-end luxury $1 million homes. We want to reduce the number of cars on the street. We have to be sensitive as far as the number of cars, right? Right now, Oxnard Boulevard is a corridor to the freeway. I've been a commissioner 9 years, and 6 years ago, that was a main concern is traffic. How can we reduce traffic on these Ventura Boulevard corridor, Oxnard Boulevard, and Rose going to the freeway? And we reduced those three main, as we get closer to the freeway, it became worse and worse and worse. And if we slow down Oxnard Boulevard, are we going to make all these, are we going to overload the others to reduce our, where we have to wait 4 red lights before we get on the freeway from Ventura Road or Rose, right? So we have to be real sensitive on those things. If you put residences and parking structures just like Santa Monica, they have about 8-story parking structure, and that place is bustling with business. People live there, walk there, and it's like a village. And we have 7 villages planned for the city of Oxnard. Why don't we make 14 more? Make it a village. We don't want to grow out, we want to grow up now, because we're running out of land. As I envision going down Oxnard Boulevard, I see beautiful architecture, beautiful landscaping, people riding their bicycle outside cafeterias and restaurants, people enjoying, they come downstairs and they enjoy they get their meat, they get their haircut, they get their coffee in the morning. And when I go to Hawaii, right on Waikiki Beach, that's a village in itself. And they have all these high rises, and within a block, there's 3 Starbucks. We do need a transportation center where trucks can stay and then have a shuttle to the restaurants can pay these shuttles services to bring them over to the Sea Bridge area or the collections.
Please.
I wanted to say that I'm really excited about these improvements to Oxnard Boulevard. I think it's going to really take us to the next level in terms of perception and quality of life. I'm a little concerned because it's a small crowd, and I know there's a lot more stakeholders that would be really interested in providing input, so I hope that the outreach will be a lot stronger on behalf of all the parties involved. So, going north on Oxnard Boulevard, there's some streets you can't turn left on, and then there's real easy for people out of town to get lost. They end up going south on the boulevard, they end up, over by Highway 1. Now, so I'm really interested in the wayfinders. But the other important thing I wanted to bring up was the rerouting, a possible rerouting of the tractor trailers on Oxnard Boulevard. Because if we're looking at this whole segment boulevard and going east on 5th Street, we should definitely get the ag companies involved. I don't see anything here because they've been begging for help. I mean, they have all this truck trailer traffic, tremendous traffic on the boulevard that are taking all these turns and causing accidents, knocking out street postings and everything. So we have to get them involved to figure out how we're going to do that. If that means we reroute them to Del Norte or Rice Road or whatever, get them off the boulevard so we can free all that space to the regular traffic. So that's really my question. Is that an option for us to reroute truck trailer traffic to encourage them to use other exits from Oxnard?
We did hear that this morning. That's also another comment that I've heard several times way before these meetings ever started. One of the things that was suggested that we have a truck facility to the east of the city,
right,
where semi-trucks.
They need a truck a lot.
Correct.
They've been asking for that.
Correct, and I think that's gaining more support in the city because more people are asking for it. You're probably referring to someplace, for instance, in the land south of the Murph.
Right, Occtip Farms is a great company. They're a big employer in Oxnard. They've been asking for that because all the trucks are parking on the street and it's just disorganized. So we've outgrown everything that we've had in that industrial park. Oxnard's outgrown it. So we have to think of a new way, like we're doing on this improvement plan. What's the new way of Oxnard? What's the new Oxnard going to look like? It's a great idea. Have the trucks park east, call them in when their loads are ready to get picked up, get them off the street, have them in a safe place, even maybe offer them some services or whatever, but that way we can free it up for cars. So we really need to
I think we can incorporate that in the master plan.
Well, we're already doing it, so let's do that.
Great comment, thank you. And I can tell you from this morning's session, we heard something very similar, and you sort of used the generic term of services. A very specific idea was raised that why not have some sort of shuttle that, because you have these drivers who are now sitting there and they have some cash, Why not provide some sort of a shuttle that brings them into the downtown area or the retail section and gives them an opportunity to inject some of their earnings and some of their revenue into the local economy. Great idea, thank you. Something we heard.
Segment 4, Second Street, 5 points. I believe it's segment 4, right?
Second Street,
Yes. I live in the BSLMR, Downland area, and one of the biggest, we had a meeting with Jason a month ago, and we brought to his attention about getting a traffic light or some type of crossing on Oxnard Boulevard at 9th Street, because it's just so much congestion right there. And since they added 7th and 8th grade junior high to Dribble, so there's more traffic, and it's just, people are not considered letting people cross right there without any signal or any stop sign.
That was 9th Street, Oxnard?
Yes, 9th Street and Oxnard Boulevard. So that was one of the big concerns, because the kids that live in our area are bound to go to Colonial School, as Dribble School is only 3 minutes away. But the reason since we can't go to that school with the kids is there's no traffic light, so it's not safe for us.
So it's a safety as well as an access issue.
Correct.
Thank you. Good idea. Sir?
I wanted to piggyback on that because that's a great idea. I hope to see more of the traffic crossings that are like the lights. For example, we have one on Woolley right by Griffel School. It's right on Woolley by the, right there, Woolley. It's very dark at night. There's not a lot of illumination, so they have these tall crossing lights that shine really bright, and then everybody, all the traffic stops, and they know to let the people cross, especially when it's getting darker earlier now. So if we had more of those throughout the city, but especially on the boulevard where the highest concentration of traffic, I mean, we got to do everything we can to alert the drivers, because if you don't know, I mean, Oxnard has a really high rate of pedestrians get hit, bicyclists get hit. We even have, I think, one of the highest hit and run driver rates in the state. So I mean, when we talk about traffic safety, we need to talk about consider all these things.
Okay. So the gentleman's comments were about traffic safety and really reaching a balance between motorized vehicles, pedestrians,
bicyclists,
cycling, perhaps dedicated cycling lanes, etc.
I heard a talk recently by the American Planning Association in Chicago, and one of the things they're starting to talk about is not how many cars you can move through an intersection, but how many people you can move down a street. And what they're finding in Chicago is that if you can change the behavior of 10 to 15% of people who are currently driving to either walk to those destinations or ride a bike, it goes a long way to improving traffic flow. And another important thing about that is that 10 to 15% is not the same people all the time. It might be me who decides to walk to the corner store today and you tomorrow. So I just wanted to throw that out as...
The gentleman talked about traffic signal synchronization, especially out in segments 3 and 4. And of course, that's a great tactic that improves traffic flow or has the potential for improving traffic flow within the existing resources, rather than having to necessarily think about adding a lane or restriping or something of that nature. Sir?
Yeah, and that's it. I have a question related to the ITS, the Intelligent Traffic System. Is there anything that you can tell us about that, or how that would benefit the boulevard? Because just like the gentleman just said, it does sometimes take 30 minutes to get from one end of Oxnard to the other. And I like to say that if I was on the one-to-one, I can take those. It takes me 30 minutes to get from Oxnard to Calabasas or Woodland Hills. So I mean, it just seems to be a real problem getting across town. So is the ITS something that's of value to us, something that's going to help us?
I do have an answer for that. On November 18th, we are going to City Council with adoption of plans and specifications for inclusion of Oxnard Boulevard in the ITS system. We didn't include it in the ITS initially because it was a Caltrans facility. We just didn't want to deal with Caltrans, but now that it's ours, we have a design and we're ready. We have funding. Once we adopt the plans and specs, then we can go out to bid for a contractor to come in and modify all the signals so that they're part of the Oxnard ITS.
So they're going to synchronize our traffic flow. I have one more question. So does that system work if there's an accident, and will that recognize there was an accident and now that because traffic's being rerouted, does it take that in consideration, and now all the cars are going in the opposite direction, and we have to work with the lights over here that the cars normally wouldn't be traveling on? I mean, is it that smart, or is it just a program?
The system has that potential. What we're talking about here is specific software, and actually we are going to be implementing as part of the Oxnard Boulevard ITS master plan. We're going to try that software for Oxnard Boulevard. If it, depending on how well it works there, we're going to expand it onto the other arterials, like Gonzales or those.
That's good to know, because the last week I've seen 2 accidents where lanes were blocked, and major lanes, Oxnard Boulevard, Gonzales, near Rose.
Yes.
So that when your lane blocks it off, that takes away that normal traffic flow, so now everybody has to go another way. So that was my question, will the system pick that up and say, hey, let's synchronize the lights here so we can eliminate that, or relieve the backup?
We are moving towards that.
Oh, that'd be great.
So what's next? Well, certainly, as I indicated a few times, encourage you to visit the project webpage to not only follow the progress of the project, and we'll be posting discussions of the various workshops, conceptual drawings, initial recommendations, etc. That really will serve as the primary communications platform. Give you an opportunity to submit comments online, follow the city on Facebook and Twitter for updates. There's a slideshow. Attend the next round of committee workshops, which will be in the spring of 2015. Another opportunity to see how the consultant team and the city staff have heard your comments and help to bring those to fruition. And then, of course, share with your friends, co-workers, on opportunities for their being able to participate also. And I want to again thank you very much for taking time out of your Saturday morning to come share your ideas, your observations, and the first step in helping develop a vision for the core. Thank you.